And joining us on the Rothman Orthopaedics guest line, just clearly one of my favorite people to ever talk to in the history of Philadelphia. Okay, so there's like Ray Didinger, and then there's Jordan Hall. Those are the writers that I give a damn about. And this is my man, Jordan Hall from NBC Sports Philadelphia. Pucks Hall, as we used to call it back at NBC. What's going on there, Jordan?
Mark, not much. I don't know if I should be in the category of Ray Didinger, but I really appreciate the kind words, and it's always great to see you.
Is that what I said? I always black out. I'm so happy to see you. Whenever I start talking to you, I just black out. I don't know what I said. If that's what I said, it's probably true. No. Jordan, it is great to see you, man. It's great to have you on again. Another time on the show here. I'm going to start out I'm going to lay it out for you how I've laid it out for my audience.
Okay.
I like and am pleasantly surprised by what the Flyers got back from Claude Giroux in that trade. And I'll get into the idea of a rental in a second. But what did you make of what they got back? What, a first and a third, or first round pick, third round pick, and the Tippett character in between? What did you make of the return for Claude Giroux?
I think at first, Mark, everyone is seeing Claude Giroux leave, and they're thinking the Flyers should be getting a king's ransom. And they have the right to feel that way. They do. It's Claude Giroux. It's an all-time great Flyer. He's been here 15 years. He's beloved. So you want a great deal in return. And I think the fact is he is 34 years old. He is viewed as a rental because he will be an unrestricted free agent. And he had a no-move clause. So he really has a lot of say in where he goes. He has earned that. And when I saw the details, at first I was, not sure they got enough. But then I really started to comprehend it and understood where the Flyers were. And those are not easy circumstances. No move clause, 34 years old, and he's a rental. So I think the Flyers knew where Claude Giroux wanted to go. They made the best of it. The fact that they got a first-round pick, I think, is actually pretty good. It's in 2024. The Panthers didn't have a first-round pick in 2022-23. So they got a first. They got a decent player. And Claude Giroux will get his chance at the Cup. So I thought both sides did right by each other. It was professional. And I think that's all you can really ask for. But it is not easy to see Claude Giroux go, and you're expecting a great deal. And then when you see it, you need to understand the circumstances. And I think the Flyers did okay.
Okay, so I was shocked that they got a first-round pick for all the reasons that you had already laid out there. Like, I thought me thinking they could get a first-round pick a week ago was, I'm just being a homer. It's because I love Claude Giroux and all the things that you said about, how he played here for so long. He was the captain and all that. But when I saw it, I was, doing the scroll, and I'm seeing it, first round pick. And then I, obviously see it's the Panthers, confirmed. And then I see also the third, and then a player that was a top 10 overall pick just, 5 years ago, and the change of scenery argument could be implemented for him as the reason to be optimistic about what he could do here in Philadelphia. And then just factor this in as well. The fact that Claude Giroux was a 23rd overall pick. How long ago? And now he's being traded for essentially a guy that was taken 10th overall 5 years ago and a pick that could be selected around the same time he was selected 15 some odd years ago. That's insane to me.
I agree. And kudos to Claude Giroux for getting better with age. He's like a fine wine. Honestly, right. He has gotten better in his 30s, genuinely. And he wanted a first-round pick in return. I mean, there's a lot of players that hit 34, 35, and they start to really taper off. He hasn't. He's been really effective. He plays in all situations, and he's a guy that's incredibly hungry to win. I thought any contending team would love a Claude Giroux, and I think the Panthers realized he was worth a first-round pick, even though it's coming in 2024. The Flyers felt like they were getting a decent return there, and you get a young player, and you also unload a couple of contracts, Mark, in that deal, and it may not seem like a big deal, but they do now have fewer contracts. It does allow them to sign some college free agents, kids that they drafted that are playing at the collegiate level and aren't signed yet. And then maybe also it allows them to go out and sign a college kid or a prospect that doesn't have any rights to an organization. So they were also able to unload a couple of contracts, which I think was important. So yeah, the fact that they got a first, I think, is huge. That was the biggest thing. I felt like it would have been tough to stomach Claude Giroux going elsewhere without getting a first. They got one and a player to boot. So at the end of the day, I thought it was a good deal for both sides.
I agree. And I wasn't expecting, like you said earlier, the King's ransom. That never entered my brain because he was so old. And the fact that, as you said, rental. How much of a rental is this? Because I think there's a legit chance that Claude Giroux is just right back, like goes down to Florida, gets a tan, and then comes back to Philadelphia, for next year? How likely, how possible is that?
Mark, I will say, I'm excited to hear that you think that. For me, I personally thought Thursday night, his 1000th game, felt kind of like a goodbye for good.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Somewhat a gut feel kind of makes me think that, like, as emotional as it was, that was him parting ways with Philadelphia for good. Or maybe deep down he doesn't know, but I think he is excited to eventually hit unrestricted free agency and really have his pick of the land. I mean, just about any team probably should be interested in a Claude Giroux, and he hasn't had the chance to do this in a while. So I do think deep down he's excited to maybe see where he could go, survey his options, see what's best for his family. But me personally, I do feel like it may be goodbye for good. I feel like there will be somewhat of an awkwardness if he came back. Just like he's such a Mark, you know him really well. He's so much of a don't look at me, I don't like attention kind of guy. And I wonder if he felt like there was so much love placed on him in that goodbye that maybe he would feel a little weird coming back. But I don't know for sure. That's just a gut feel. But right. I do think this situation right now is purely a rental. Florida is getting him for a month plus and a playoff run. Mm-hmm. And then after that, maybe Florida wins it all and Claude really likes it there and they re-sign him. That would probably help him wanting to go back there is, winning a cup and feeling like he should stay there and try to do it again. But yeah, this is very much a rental for a 34-year-old player. So again, I think that's why the Flyers were very realistic about this trade, especially given Claude Giroux really had the keys.
Mm-hmm. Certainly. What can you tell me about Owen Tippett? Is this a guy, like I said earlier, a change of scenery could help him and really achieve his potential, or is this a guy that was more or less a throw-in? What do you have in Owen Tippett?
I think the Flyers liked him. I don't think they probably loved him. It wasn't like the top prospect probably on their list. I don't think they probably loved him for a while, but he was a 10th overall pick in 2017, a power forward type. Those guys tend to jump into your lineup and play well because they play a physical, go to the net type of style. If you put him with a good center, they can really get in there right away and be effective. He has NHL experience, 94 games going into his debut on Sunday with the Flyers and looked pretty good. So yeah, a power forward type that can maybe score 20 goals eventually at some point in his career. So I don't think the Flyers feel 100% that they're going to hit on this kid and he's going to make this deal a major victory, but there's a lot of upside and he does get a chance to change of scenery. It's not like he did poorly in Florida, but Florida is deep. They are very deep. They're ready to win a cup. And it seems like he couldn't quite carve out his role there. Here he comes to a team that's full on selling and remaking and looking for youth, looking for guys to step in and kind of take the bull by the horns. And he'll have a chance to do it. They're going to play him. He's going to get a long look here. And hopefully the pressure's not too big on him. You feel bad when a younger kid, like a 23-year-old, is attached to the Claude Giroux trade. Hopefully that's not too much pressure on him. He can just kind of come in here and be himself.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to Claude Giroux and his career in Philadelphia, one of the things that people always look back on is he didn't win the cup, which is obvious and warranted, and they didn't get out there to the second round of the playoffs. When it comes to Claude Giroux, why do you think in his captaincy, not in his total time here in Philadelphia, but just in his captaincy, why do you think this Flyers team wasn't as successful?
Mark, it's a shame, but I just don't think he had enough help. And I just thought they were somewhat stagnant during his prime years. They kept drafting and developing, and that's fine and well, but sometimes kids take time to really be cornerstones and support a player in his 30s in his prime. And Mark, I always go back to 2017-18 when he had 102 points. He was magnificent. He set career highs across the board at 30 years old. Mark, they got into the playoffs on the very last day of the regular season. Claude Giroux had to score a hat trick to get them in. It's just a guy that at 30 years old putting up 102 points, he should have had more help. Imagine if he had more help on that team and what kind of points he would have put up. Mm-hmm. I just don't think they ever really fully supported him. He had good players, but I don't know if they had game-changing players. If you look at some of the great players, Sidney Crosby, Alex Ovechkin, guys that finally got over the hump or have been over the hump multiple times with a cup to their name, they have really good sidekicks, really good players. And I just don't – it's not a knock on some of the guys that were here, but I don't think they were ever deep enough. And I don't think they ever really went for it in Claude Giroux's prime of his 30s, late 20s. And I think that's why they never really got deep in the playoffs at all. I mean, over the last 10 years of Claude Giroux's 10 years of Claude Giroux's tenure in Philly, one playoff series victory, Mark. One. That's just, and it came when they kind of had an overhaul with the front office and Alain Vigneault's first year, Chuck Fletcher. That was the year that in the last 10 years, Claude got past the first round of the playoffs. I just don't think he got enough help. It's a shame because I thought he was a all-time great player that really fit this city. And it's a shame he never won.
I agree. I with all the talk about the Sixers and what they were going to do with Ben Simmons and then finally getting James Harden, you constantly heard the phrase, don't waste Joel Embiid's prime. And I feel like, and now I think Joel Embiid is I'll get this out of the way. Joel Embiid is a better basketball player, I think, than Claude Giroux is hockey players, especially overall importance to the league. But I still feel like in the prime of his career, the Flyers organization, it almost went through 3 or 4 different rebuilds while he was the captain, it felt like.
That's so true. They kind of slowly build it. And that's fine if you want to rebuild and start from scratch, tear it down, but you were not in a tear down mode. You had a Claude Giroux, you had a captain going into his 30s, hitting his peak, and it just never got to that next year. I remember one of the biggest signings I think they really had during Claude Giroux's prime was James Van Riemsdyk. And it probably came a little bit too late, and boom, James Van Riemsdyk's first season, Dave Haxtell's fired, Ron Hextall's fired, and they're kind of reshaping it again. It just never really, the whole beautiful plan of drafting and developing and building from within, but also never tearing it down, like it never came and met perfectly. It's tough to do that. It's tough to want to compete every single year, but also draft and develop and never really make trades and take on maybe a player with a lot of term and money to him, but a player that's a game changer for 2 years. Sometimes you got to balance get him now and maximize a year or two and then bite the bullet down the road. And they never quite did that, Mark.
Last thing for you, long term, who's the captain of the Flyers?
Great question. It's funny. Someone was asking me, do I think they'll name a captain this year? They definitely won't. Sean Couturier is out for the rest of the season. Scott Lawton is a guy that is starting to grow into a leader. He had an A on his jersey before he got a concussion not long ago. So he's out for a little bit. I don't think they're going to make like a loud move like that this season. But Mark, I think it will be Sean Couturier. His new deal will kick in next year. He's going to be healthy. If you cross your fingers, he should be back from that back surgery. And I think he was kind of the captain in waiting. He played under Claude Giroux for a long time. He's a lead by example guy. I think he fits the Flyers mold. So Mark, my prediction is Sean Couturier. I'm eager to hear yours.
Oh, it's Coots. It's okay. Coots. But I'll go to the next level. Here's where I think it goes. Sean Couturier is your next captain. Danny Briere is your next general manager when he takes over for Chuck Fletcher, whenever that day comes. And then Danny Briere will be the GM of a team captained by Coots. The connection there is not just that they were teammates, but of course, Sean Couturier lived with Danny Briere when Sean Couturier was first drafted in the NHL. Danny Briere and his sons. And I remember seeing the videos of them playing Xbox together. Like that. That's just going to be a funny world to live in, man, with those guys essentially running the Flyers. You know what I'm saying?
That is an awesome connection. And real quick, if I can, why do you think Claude Giroux could be back next year? What gives you that feel?
It's nothing that he and I have talked about. I just feel like he really loves the city of Philadelphia. I feel like he loves being here. I feel like he's going to look at it as a one-time opportunity to go try and win a cup somewhere else and then possibly come back here on a lesser deal. That's what I think. That's my prediction right now. Obviously, the allure, like you said, it's a totally valid argument, and you may be right. I don't know that I'm right. I'm spitballing here. But when it comes to what he could do in the future, I think ultimately he will want to come back to Philadelphia, especially if Philly does enough in the next couple of years to warrant maybe a championship run. And I think some people, here's another argument. How close are the Flyers to turning it around? Are they just a couple of healthy guys, or are they major acquisitions away? And is one of those acquisitions the reacquisition of Claude Giroux himself?
Yeah, and I think that's what's crazy about it is that the Flyers, I think, would have to be god-awful for Claude Giroux to be traded and to really want to get away from here. And that's what happened. Like, I thought they could have been on the brink of the race. They could have been around it, and they would have kept Claude Giroux, and they would have said, hey, we're not ready to part ways. We feel like we have a shot, and we'll reconvene later at the end of the year. But they happened to be one of the worst 5 teams in the league, and just everything went wrong. And it was the perfect storm, and it led to Giroux, 15-year player, 15-year Flyer, a great guy, great player. coming to an end here in Philadelphia. It's hard to believe.
It is kind of part of it, though, in terms of what you said about him wanting to eventually get out of here. It was like, okay, there was a list of teams he wanted to go on or leave and go to, and apparently it was a list of like one team. So it's like he wasn't like, all right, here's my list, half the league. You know what I'm saying? Like, I choose 15 other teams before I choose the Flyers again. The fact that it was so small, the fact that it was a list of one, which isn't even a list, it's just an index card. Basically, here's the team. So it's like a 3-letter text message, FLA. But so like that's another reason why I would say he would come back to Philadelphia before he goes somewhere else, especially if he ends up winning the Cup in Florida. But hey, here's hoping Claude eventually comes back. Ooh, how awkward! And then Cooch is the captain. I'm kidding. But that'll be a whole other thing. Jordan Hall, ladies and gentlemen. If you guys don't read him, are you even Flyers fans? Check out Jordan Hall, NBC Sports Philadelphia, obviously. Check him out. Give him a follow, obviously, on Twitter if you guys want to stay abreast of all the hockey situations in Philadelphia. Old Jordan Pucks Hall. Jordan, great catching up with you, man. Thanks so much.
Mark, thanks so much. Great seeing you. Great chatting with you. I appreciate having me on.
Always a pleasure, my friend. Jordan Hall joining us on the Rothman Orthopaedics guest line.